Good deal. Good morning. Thanks for everybody for being on here. Doing this via Zoom because we wanted it to be accessible for all types of media, for TV, radio, everybody. Um, and also wanted to give you and our fans some insight on how we're operating right now as a program. Um, Truly unprecedented times. Um, our thoughts and prayers are with all those whose lives have been affected by the COVID-19. I also want everyone to know that we are thinking and supporting those who are on the front line fighting against this virus. Want to really applaud WVU medicine, Clay Marsh in particular. I think he's done a great job in his communication and how we've handled it this far. Sorry about that. Here today to talk about West Virginia football program, what we're doing as far as operating during these times. Our first and main priority right now is really the health and well-being of our players and staff, and so we are moving forward, but also in full awareness that the health and well-being not only of each individual but of our players as well. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Let's see here. Coach Hunter, you on? Unmute your line because it's not letting me. There you go.
Hear me now? Hey, so Coach, I guess the general question: how are you operating? How do you contact players? What's the procedure for the last few weeks?
Yeah, well, we started this week. Our guys were on spring break last week, as most of you all know, and really outside of text and some things like that, we kind of left them alone. Started trying to get back on schedule on Monday. And basically what we're doing is we're doing some type of daily check-in via this tool, Zoom. We've had 2 team meetings, and then they either get it together on a Zoom meeting with their accountability teams and accountability coaches or with their position groups. We're not allowed to do football. We're not doing any football right now. It's really just kind of check-ins every day, really encouraging our guys to do to get into routine. I think that's really important. And so that's how we're operating as a football team, is everybody that stays in contact with our players, whether it's their position coach, Mike Joseph and his strength conditioning staff, Farrell Franklin, our nutrition staff, Brittany Odell academically, Will Johnson. We have multiple touch points for each player on our team, and we're doing most of those by this tool, Zoom, also utilizing FaceTime. I think face-to-face, I talked about it last night on with you guys, is eyeball to eyeball, trying to get eyeballs on everybody within our organization on a daily basis.
Anyone else, just go ahead and raise your hand on here and we'll get your question. Go ahead, Derek.
Hey, Coach, I had a question on the recruiting aspect of things. I know there's a dead period involved here, but kind of how are you now being able to kind of at least stay in contact with guys that you've offered or guys that you're trying to offer, or kind of even evaluating prospects at this point because there is no ability for you to get out?
Yeah, well, the evaluations continue, and most of those are game or highlight tape evals. Actually, probably getting ahead of that. Most of our 21 class evals have already been done. We're into the 22s and 23s now, so we're probably getting ahead as far as video evals. What we're missing out is you're not getting some of the information that you would normally get from the national camp circuit. You're not getting that. The other thing you're missing is the on-campus visits. We had a lot of people, especially a lot of recruits, especially those in the Southeast, had made plans to come up during their spring break and watch us practice during our spring practice, but also do it in a time during their spring break where they're not missing class or anything like that, where they can spend a little bit more time. And so we're not having those. So the people that have already been on our campus, a lot of, especially here in our primary area within a 4 to 6 hour drive of Morgantown, have been on our campus multiple times. So with those guys and their families, we're just maintaining communication, multiple phone calls, FaceTime calls, those type of things, and probably doing so at a higher rate than maybe we normally do, just because we don't have practice going on. We don't have meetings and some of those type of activities take us away from recruiting. So the communication is probably a little bit more so. The real challenge is with those recruits and their families who haven't been on our campus, and what we're trying to do to communicate. We're communicating with them, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to take West Virginia, what's great about West Virginia, what we have to offer here, we're trying to take that to them via different videos and conversations with different people within our organization.
Just a reminder to raise your hand, click participants in the lower bar there. Then on the lower right-hand corner, it will say raise hand. Next question is from Kevin Kinder. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, Coach, you mentioned that football is obviously restricted right now, but Mike Joseph is still working with the players. Has he provided like strength things, suggestions on what they can do if they can't get to gyms? How's that process working right now?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we can't really have any monitored football activity. What he's able to do is offer workouts. We just can't track whether those workouts are being accomplished or whatever. So he's basically got 3 different types of workouts that he's sending out. One of those workouts is if guys have access to normal weight room, a normal kind of setup. The second one is those who have limited access. So maybe they have a weight bench or a squat rack or something like that at their house. They have very limited access. And then the third type is for those who have nothing, and that it's all body weight. We're focused, his focus is on conditioning right now more than anything. We know there's going to be some strength drop off, but he's more concerned about the running aspect of it at all. But right now we don't have the ability to track it. And so we're operating on really giving them some things they could potentially do. We're hoping, it's our hope that they're doing something, but we can't mandate it and we can't necessarily track them right now.
All right, John Antoniuk.
I know we're kind of driving through the fog on this, Coach, but have you got
to say the least?
Yeah. Have you got a feeling from your players that you've talked to and from the coaches that they understand the severity of this? And, you've seen the things with spring breakers, guys down on the beach and things like that. Have you been able to get a feel for how your guys are handling this?
It's evolving. It is. I think the age group that we deal with, the 17 to 22, 23, probably has been the slowest as a group. I'm just grouping people together. I'm not saying individually, but has been the slowest to come to terms. This is something we've been dealing with now. We've been trying to communicate with our guys probably since the beginning of March, maybe the end of February. And I think this week is when the severity of the situation is really starting to hit home. I think this pandemic is something that's going to affect everybody. Whether it's, somebody who's been diagnosed, somebody that's on the front line that's fighting this. You're suffering through the financial ramification. I think everybody's going to be affected by it. I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. I think everybody understands that. And so I do think they, here in probably this week, have understood the severity. I think our staff did a really good job of trying to stay in front of this as best we could. I thought they did a really good job last week during spring break while everybody was gone to really monitor where everybody's at and try to educate these guys. What is social distancing? We had we even sent some videos out kind of educating them what social distancing is. We've really emphasized staying home. And so at the beginning, did they understand? Probably not. Have we been perfect? Definitely not. are they starting to understand the severity of it now? I do believe so.
Go ahead, Chris Anderson.
Coach, obviously limited with spring practice and everything, but has there been any indication from anybody you've spoken with about the NCAA maybe loosening coach interaction during the summer, or maybe opening things up for kind of an OTA type situation?
I think those discussions are ongoing. I know that Shane and athletic directors in the Big 12 have really been staying consolidated on this. I think they've been in open communication throughout this whole process. I know they have a meeting later this week. We have the March 29th date in right now for the Big 12. I know they're talking through that, what our immediate future looks like. And when I say immediate future, what's it look like over the next few weeks as far as what type of activity is going to be allowed. I think some of the Power 5 commissioners are probably having those same conversations. And then once the immediate future is our immediate plans laid out, I think then it moves when teams are able to get back together. What does that look like? I think that we need to do something. I think we have to. I would caution on just adding on to training camp. I don't think that's a good answer. I don't think that's a productive answer. I don't think that's the most positive thing for our players. I think something, if we could do OTA type workouts, I think that, in my opinion, you should wear some kind of headgear. I don't think you need to wear pads. I think you need to wear some kind of headgear just to make it safer. So wear helmets. And I think you can get a lot of quality work done in that frame. What I would be a proponent of is, you're still would potentially get up to 15 workouts. So if you're a team that got 6 practices in, then you get 9 of those OTA workouts in. If you had 2 like we did, you would get 13 of those OTA workouts in. I think you got to limit them from a time standpoint. You got to limit them from an equipment standpoint. But I would be in favor of that. There's a lot of logistics on how you got to work through that to make that a reality. But I think all things are on the table right now. But I think the immediate future, what it looks like over the next several weeks, is what's going to get the most attention by the administrators.
Just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, click participants, then raise hand. Alex Hickey.
This might be more of a Shane question, but I'll ask you anyway. The construction, you've got massive renovation going on. Has that been affected yet by this, and has the timeline at all been altered yet by the ability to work?
Yeah, so what I'll tell you is the construction is ongoing. They're continuing to work. I have not been by the stadium since the weekend. I'm trying to do our part and stay here. But I do know that the meetings are continuing via remotely. I know that the construction group is still in. So as far as has it affected the timeline, I think it's too early to tell. The crews are having to abide by social distancing policies that are in place. But work is continuing to be done on the Pushkar Center.
All right, go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Coach. This was obviously this happened yesterday in the afternoon. They're moving commencement online in May, and December they're allowing seniors to walk. I don't know if you had any chance to speak to any of your seniors, even though it just happened yesterday, to get their general mood or their reaction to that news.
No, we haven't yet. I have that on my agenda today, is to kind of trying to FaceTime a group of guys every single day. So on my agenda today is to FaceTime this afternoon those that were scheduled to graduate and get on there and just make sure they understand what that looks like, how that's affected them. But we're going to have those conversations today.
Go ahead, John.
I know you're a planner, and it's hard to plan right now when things are changing by the minute. But eventually, at some point, this is going to end, and you're going to have to, you have that in the back of your mind, whether it's May, June, July, August, whatever, how you're going to move forward once things are lifted and you're able to do stuff?
Well, one thing we have right now is time. So, there's a lot of different thought processes. And really I knew this was a big deal for a while. The magnitude probably hit, unfortunately, about 15 minutes after the final press conference we had after our Thursday spring, or that last spring practice we had. We walked out of that press conference and you all had a lot of really good questions, and I really probably thought we were going to practice the next morning and then that would be the end. I did have the foresight to see. I felt like that probably was going to be the last time, and probably the last time I saw them for a while. But the magnitude hit is, within minutes after that press conference, walking out, and all of a sudden, the SEC basketball, then the Big 12, and then by the end of the day, I think every league had canceled their tournament, and before that, not too long after that, the NCAA canceled their basketball tournament, and so the magnitude of it really hit. So really, since that Friday, both myself, Shane, Kelly, with our staff here, just talking through what potentially does it look like. The first things we were trying to work through is, okay, how do we do this? How do we work from home? And I think we've come up with a pretty good battle rhythm of how we're doing this. What are our communication methods with our players? When accountability measures are put in place, how can we hold them accountable academically? How can we hold them accountable strength conditioning wise? How can we hold them accountable football wise? How can we hold them accountable academically? All those. So we have a plan for those. And so now, after we're trying to get them through this initial to make sure that everybody's in a good spot, they're safe, they're fed, all those type of things. Now we're getting to the point, okay, so whenever we do get to go ahead to have football activity, what's that look like? If we have to do it remotely, what's it look like? More and more guys are going to come back to Morgantown. We can't control that. So what does that look like? How do we handle them when we get the majority of our team back here? So those are the type of questions. What does it look like if we are going to have OTAs? How do we manage that? What does that look like from our perspective? What if we don't get them until right at fall camp? What do we need to change as far as that goes? And so having all those type of, and really you want to have a plan. You don't want to get too carried away with it as far as a time investment, because you just don't know. But you do want to have those thoughts, and if that's the way it goes, you want to have some things you go to immediately.
All right, go ahead, Kevin Kinder.
Coach, I'm guessing that your accountability team leaders and your leadership council are even more important right now. Do you have meetings with them? Are you telling them, hey, here's the things we really need to emphasize during this time?
Yeah, what I've been telling them, and I'll say this publicly, is a tremendous challenges present tremendous opportunities, and nobody controls these circumstances. We control how we respond. I think good things come out of, not that anything good's come from this virus, but our responses can be good. And one thing that we may push the accelerator on is, I think as you go through a process of kind of building a program, and that's what we're doing right now, is you want to eventually go from a coach-led team to a player-led team. And we're having to do that probably quicker than we imagined. And maybe we were ready. And this break here is going to prove if we were ready or not, because we're having to be a player-led team in a lot of different manners. And so I'm excited to see. How the leadership on our team reacts to this. I want to see how accountable we are to each other. So definitely, do they have more responsibility now than they did before? Without a doubt.
Go ahead, Mike Kazaza.
Hey, Neal, how's it going?
Good, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm wondering, the things you're talking about, you can't do football things, whether it's weight room or, talking to players. That's because of the March 29 date, correct?
That is the March 29th date.
Okay.
Yes. And we
so-
we can have conversations, Mike. We just can't. There cannot be any football aspect to it.
Right. I just want to make sure I had that right. So let's say nothing changes on March 30. You could theoretically walk through plays or talk football or things like that, and I don't know, work video into that. Is that kind of the next step? What does it look like that you're talking about, just to get ready in case that wall does come down in a couple of days?
Yes, that's exactly. So that's been kind of our planning as a staff. Basically, we're spending the mornings kind of making sure we're communicating, doing all those things with our players. In the afternoons, spending recruiting, and then kind of preparing for if we do go to an 8-hour off-season type of work environment for our staff and 8-hour rule for our players. How do we do that remotely? If we get the okay to do position meetings, we've been trial and error with that all week. What way do we want to do that? What's the most effective way where we can have participation? What's the video look like? All those type of things. How do we, if we want to quiz guys on what they're retaining, how do we do that? So that's exactly, Mike. We're having all those type of conversations, and really what I'm leaning towards is using. We're trying to use as few different types of technology as possible, and so every meeting that we're doing right now is Zoom because it's easy to use. Our guys over the course of a few days have learned how to use it. They already know how to use our DV Sport football system, video system. We use Teamworks to communicate. They know how to use the ins and outs of that. So we're trying to condense it as much and try not to introduce a whole bunch of new things, because when you do that, you're just changing one more thing. And there's so many things that are changing in their lives. I'm trying to keep everything condensed as possible, but we're preparing if the Big 12 athletic directors tell us, hey, okay, we're operating off of 8-hour, and I'm just throwing that out there, okay, and 8-hour off-season rules, then as soon as that goes down, boom, we have a plan. We're ready to roll.
Go ahead, Alan Taylor.
Hey, Neal. Is it too early to talk about the potential budget impact? I mean, I know you guys have to, raise money for the construction and all that sort of stuff, but even for recruiting budgets and things like that, because it seems like regardless, there's going to be potentially a huge gap in revenue for the sport that you guys coach and that really keeps these athletic departments afloat. Have you even touched on that yet during the downtime and what that might look like over the coming year?
I think there's going to be ramifications without question. There's going to be significant, I would even say, ramifications. We've had surface level discussions about it. We're doing everything that we can right now from a budget standpoint just to save money. I think we probably are saving money working remotely and our players not being here. So I think that's happening. That's just a consequence. But I'm not really prepared to probably answer those type of questions, but I do think it is inevitable.
Go ahead, John.
Stepped out for a minute, so I apologize if this was asked, but kind of a hypothetical here. From a professional opinion, how much time would you need to get your team prepared, say if this extended into the summertime, to, number one, not affect the product of the game, but number two, the health and well-being of the players? How much prep work would you need to get a season going?
Really, John, I don't want to speculate just yet. That's something that Mike Joseph and Vince Blankenship and we'd really have to put some time into planning. I do think the conditioning aspect of it is critical. I think if we try to shorten that prep, you're looking at definitely a higher likelihood of injury, which I don't think that's something that anybody associated with the game is interested in doing.
Go ahead, Mike.
Is that me?
Yep.
Oh, I don't really think. How about this? All the technology stuff you're talking about, Neal, and having to put classes online. Are all your players equipped to do that, or has that been kind of like herding cats and trying to make sure everybody is able to put that together?
Yeah, so Brittany Odell, who leads our academics, she does a phenomenal job. And so she's been on this really for the last 2 weeks. And where we're at, just so everybody has an understanding, so people that were in online classes, and ironically, I know we went through this whole deal a couple of weeks ago where I talked about why we moved away from online classes, but here we are, we're back. So so the folks that were on that were in online classes during the normal operating semester, they are currently in their classes. Those classes started back on Monday, so they're doing their online classes. And we have several guys that are in online classes, so they're doing work this week. All the in-person classes, they go online. You probably know this since you teach, but they go live on Monday. And so we don't have as many guys right now that that are taking classes, but the full team will be taking them on Monday. So what we try to do is and Brittany's been kind of leading the charge on this, trying to assess what everybody's capabilities are. And what we've done is we've seen where some guys left their iPads. We've been working on getting that to them. Several of them have computers. They have computers with them. And so we're making it where everybody has the technology that's required to be able to accomplish that. All our players are given, we supply iPads for everybody on our team. Some of them just didn't think ahead to take them with them, so we've had to get them to them.
All right, so we have 3 more questions here, then we'll go ahead and cut it. Go ahead, Chris Anderson.
Coach, June's always a big month for recruiting camps and evaluations of those guys. Is there a hard deadline for you or the program to make a decision on those camps still running? And or do you think the NCAA might, say, move around the live periods and the dead periods during the summer?
I don't know. I think the moving around the recruiting periods is going to be a really complicated deal because so much of that spring eval period is based around schools in session. And so I'm guessing here, but I'm going to – and it's probably not – I don't know if we'll have – very doubtful we'll have a spring recruiting period. I don't think I'm going out on a limb on that. Will they move some of those things to the summer? I don't think so, just because I think that's really complicated. We are moving forward as if we are going to have camps. Moving forward with every bit of understanding is the NCAA could say at any time, hey, you're not having camps, or our universities could say you're not having camps. But I'd rather have everything prepared, like we're going to have those camps, and then if they get shut down, then we'll deal with them. But that's kind of how we're operating. That's going to be a huge piece. You know, live evaluations are very, very important. I think not only ourselves, but most college football teams at this level make their decisions on live evals. Whether it's in a camp setting, it's in spring football, whatever it is, you're not going to have those live evaluations. And so it's going to change the landscape. It's another information point or a piece of data that you're collecting that you're not going to have the opportunity to have, which is unfortunate, but that's just part of it. Everybody's on the same playing field.
No, we got 2 more here. Alex Hickey, go ahead.
This is a 2-part deal. First, do you have to sort of, in sending players home, pay attention, or do you find yourself paying attention to the areas geographically that have become hot spots and stuff? And then specifically, what's the situation with Jai Favoris and with the travel restrictions?
Yeah, so we've got Vince Blankenship, who's our head athletic trainer. As part of our daily interaction, he shares a detailed COVID-19 report with me. Part of that report is the hot spots. We kind of filter through it and give our players a condensed version of that. Our players and staff get a condensed version, but a part of that daily correspondence includes the hot spots. Right now, what we have in place university-wide is it's a mandatory 5-day quarantine coming back. If you're not one of those hot spots, just coming back into Morgantown, it's a 5-day quarantine. And if you're in one of those hot spots, it's a mandatory 14-day quarantine. Jai is in town. He has remained in town. Coach Adai and Patrick Johnston, who's our director of football operations, and myself have been in almost daily communication with him. He's doing well. He did not go back home.
All right. Go ahead, Greg Hunter.
Okay, so we'll end it on a football question. You saw 2 days of spring drills. What did you see? What did you like? What didn't you like?
Yeah, so I like I think we're an eager group. It's a fun group to coach. Our skill level is much better than we were a year ago. I think our cohesiveness is better. And I'm not just talking about our players. I think just our staff, everything is more cohesive. I think there's some guys that have made some really big jumps, which you hope to see, especially year 1 to year 2 guys. I think there's been some pleasant surprises on the offensive front, which you're only in helmets, so it's hard to tell. But I've been pleased with that. And I think we've got some talent on the perimeter on offense. I think our receivers got a chance to be one of the better groups, and so looking forward to working with them. Unfortunately, they were missing the spring. I just thought that this off season and this spring practice was going to be critical. That's been, hey, everybody's on the same. I'm glad it's not year 1 for us. I'll say that as a positive. But this is the hand we're dealt. We're going to move forward, make the most of it. And I'll finish with this. I appreciate everybody being on here. We're going to continue to try to provide as much content as we possibly can for you all. I know this is a difficult time. And so Monty and myself will make a point to try to do this where we can give everybody some content and try to keep you as informed as we possibly can. And I think we've worked with most of you as far as making some people available, trying to stay away from players as much as we can right now, just because there's so much going on. But I would just urge everyone, this is obviously a serious situation. We can do our best work by just staying at home. Who would have thought you can do your best work by doing nothing? And that's kind of where we're at. Stay at home. I encourage everybody to support local businesses, support local news. I think that's something that kind of gets overshadowed. We talk about local business a lot, but support local news, whether it's radio, print, television. Support those. That's important. I say this to you probably not often enough, but I do. I appreciate what you all do. I appreciate not only in sports, but in every aspect. I appreciate what you do. You have a great service to our community, and not only everybody watching or listening, but you all as well. Stay safe. Thanks.
Monty, you want to say something?
Yeah, just thanks a lot, Coach. Appreciate your time, and thanks everybody for being on the line.